Welcome to 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Dr. Sylvia Bank, and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Dr. Vivian Carlin. Between our two households, we're navigating life with 10 children, so we know how chaotic parenting can be. As Johns Hopkins-trained pediatricians, we also know the science. Our goal is to bring you the best of both worlds, medically sound, trustworthy advice, and practical, real-world insights as we dive into the trials and triumphs of parenting. Please note this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment from your doctor.
Today is very exciting because we are celebrating the end of season 2.
Yes, our purpose of season 2 was basically reiterating the Surgeon General's advisory from August 2024 entitled Parents Under Pressure, where it was really like a public announcement of the difficulties of parenting and the need to support parents through the sacred journey of parenting that we really took to heart as a theme for our podcast.
And with our 10 children, we certainly attest to there were high pressure points.
Yeah. Like some of those timeless parenting challenges that we hit this year were breastfeeding, right? I think just seeing a postpartum mom just go through the birth process and struggling with feeding their baby and getting their baby to gain weight. That's a time where a parent is most likely to cry in the office, right? It's very, very stressful. And there's a lot of expectation with parenting focused at that period of time.
Yeah, totally. It's so beautiful and wonderful and bonding and all of those things, but there is a reality to how difficult and painful and trying it can be as well for moms. Yeah. And then we covered so many topics in that early infant and toddler period that are so common that people go through. I mean, everybody goes through what is it like to transition to the toddler bed and when do you do that? A lot of people go through thumb sucking and night terrors and bedwetting and all of those things too.
Not to mention some medical things that as pediatricians we want to highlight, like the leading cause of death between 1 and 4-year-olds, drowning and preventing drowning.
We've covered a number of issues that are a little bit more unique to what it's like to parent in 2026. We devoted a lot of time to explaining vaccine preventable illness and the importance of vitamin K. And those are issues that have become such high pressure points for parents now as compared to 20 years ago.
Yeah, and something that parents back in the day used to look forward to protect their children and get immunizations now becomes a decision that some parents feel like they need to agonize over. So this is how current times can create pressure situations for parents, right?
Yeah, we talked a lot this season about neurodiversity. And, the bane of every parent's existence in 2026, social media, gaming, cell phones. How do we manage them? What do we do? When do we give them? How do we monitor them? Et cetera, et cetera.
No, absolutely. So unique challenges to parents today that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago, right? So we try to highlight both timeless parenting challenges and unique challenges to today's parent.
And that's why we're here to support each other through it, to share stories that make us laugh and sometimes make us cry, and try to troubleshoot all of these parenting challenges in today's age. So Sylvia, what I would like to do with you today, I want to take you through some of the more poignant moments in our season 2 where there were revelations that came about through our discussions between us and with guest speakers that are applicable in the scenario we were talking about and often in the broader context of parenting.
Mm-hmm. Like a walk down memory lane of season 2, right?
Yeah. Some of the highlights, some of the best moments, in my opinion. So I want to start with a clip. This is a point you made when we were discussing food allergy. So let me play this for you.
I want to describe to our listeners what it may look like in your home. You're either a parent who is rightfully fearful of food allergy and anaphylaxis and EpiPen, and you're hyper vigilant about everything that goes into that child's mouth, about every food that is in your home. You're forced to be this really paranoid parent when it comes to food allergy and making sure that it doesn't happen at all. Or you're the parent who isn't super hypervigilant, which not everyone can be. And honestly, I was not one of those parents. And you occasionally make a mistake where the food that they're allergic to, for some reason they ingest it, and then you have this extreme feeling of guilt, right? So you're literally either this crazy hypervigilant parent or this parent that makes an understandable mistake with like a ton of guilt because you did that. And that is what it's like sometimes living with food allergy in your home.
Yeah, I totally remember that. And since that episode, I feel like this analogy of either hypervigilant parent versus a parent who has to deal with the guilt of making a mistake, I feel like this is not just applicable to food allergy, which clearly it is, but I see this analogy coming up in my pediatric practice and my own kids. And I'll give you another example. I was talking to a friend today on a morning walk, and we were talking about taking risks. I think as a parent, you're like hyper vigilant about their safety. So the instinct is to want to shield and shelter. Like every parent can relate to that thought in your mind that something could go wrong and I want to protect you. That's what parents do. But then you're also taking away their opportunity to take appropriate risks, right? So they never learn to feel comfortable and do that, as opposed to the parent who's like, go ahead, and something happens to the kid. Then you're that parent with so much guilt, like, oh my gosh, I knew I shouldn't have let you go. I can't believe I did that. And I think this describes what the dilemma is like for parents when making these types of decisions, either obviously with like food allergy and hypervigilance, but also with risk taking and injury prevention. There is a balance there that just protecting them, you are taking something away from them, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Especially as we speculate more and more that part of development is taking risks, and we need to be cautious about our hyper safetyism, like our culture that has encouraged us to be so protective of our children. And when and how are we going to let them take that risks? That's a very challenging topic for any parent. You make me think of another issue that came up this season where parents really face this conundrum of like, which extreme of parenting are you going to be? And that came up with gaming. And so let me play you a clip from that episode.
I feel like that there's two models when your child is young in how you allow video games. One model is like a very restrictive model where you control the video games, you control the time, you teach them how to basically not do it. And then the hope is that they are not exposed to it, they're not addicted to it, it's not part of their routine, and then they don't seek it out. And then the flip side, which I've heard other parents in discussing video games with them, is that you allow your child to have access to video games, and they reach this point where they play it nonstop, and then suddenly they get it out of their system. So I feel like those are the two models that I hear of how parents approach video games and allowing their child to either restrict or exhaust themselves and overdose and then get it out of their system.
Right. And unfortunately, the problem is we don't know which model works best for which kid, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we had a formula and data to say, okay, this model prevents gaming addiction, then we would all do it. But we don't have that. And I've had a very different strategy with each of my kids. I think when I think about that quote, we have to make the best decision for our family, for our child, for me as a parent. And that might look very different from the decisions that somebody else makes for their child, right? You know your child best. This is part of what we want to do on this podcast is empower parents to feel confident. Nobody knows your child as well as you do. Nobody knows yourself as well as you do. And there are some parenting techniques that work great for one family and don't work well for another family. Hopefully is this confidence to think about who you are as a parent, who your child is as a child, and with these details of what we do in our parenting, figure out what's best for the two of you.
Yeah. I also feel like another layer of this is that there should be an understanding that there isn't just one right way to parent. There's not just that one formula that everyone needs to do. Families are different, children are different, and to know that you need to, as a parent, make that call for each individual child of yours as to what's best for them individually, right?
And so in that, there's a lot of granting each other grace in the decisions that we make for our families. So I want to change gears for a minute and go address some things that are a little more serious. Early on in season 2, we had Dr. Julia Jackson, who was a wonderful guest who practices as a child and adolescent psychiatrist. The majority of her patients have been children with autism, and she actually has had the experience of a parent who also has a child with autism. And I love her overarching thoughts on that. I'm going to play that for you.
For me, it comes down to the most important thing you can do as a parent is to maintain that relationship with your child. I believe that comes even over their specific behaviors or any sort of parenting approach. Always maintain the relationship. So if you start to get into a spiral where the relationship itself is starting, now there's going to be moments in any parent-child dynamic where you're arguing and fighting over something. But if that's the majority of the time, it's time to try something different because it's not working. All of our parenting, the whole point of our parenting is to shape behavior in a positive way and shape development. So if it's not working, you have to at some point have a timeout. And if you need a professional to help you find another way, then that'd be a great time to do it because you don't want to have that chronic relationship breakdown with your children. So for me, that's my take home from parenting is always maintain the relationship. If it means the kiddo is not going to pass a few classes or they're going to have to repeat a certain grade, so be it, because continuing to yell and get in arguments is not helping anyway. So at least you can maintain a positive relationship while you figure out the other things. But if what you're doing is not working and it's causing negative interactions, then it's time to try something different. Kids learn by how we treat them. They learn a lot through mutual respect. They learn a lot through modeling. They tend to do what we do more so than what we say. And that's my take home point. And be okay with changing the timelines. We have these artificial ideas based on societal norms of what should happen in what time frame. But if that's not where your kid's at, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, nothing, you're not going to self-implode. You know, you're not going to end up being banished to a faraway island if they don't finish high school on time. So kind of keeping things in perspective is really helpful too, and not getting caught up in your own, anxiety.
I love, she has so many quotes. I mean, she says so much in this little excerpt where she says the whole part of parenting is to be able to shape our children's behavior and shape their development. I mean, I've never heard anyone describe parenting so simply, but it's totally true, right? I think that message gets lost for a lot of parents where they think that their children represent their own accomplishment. Parents get lost in the keeping up with the Joneses. They get lost in a lot of other purposes of parenting. But I think she states it very simply. And with that in mind, the whole point of what she's saying is that if you've lost relationship and you can't influence them anymore because you're fighting or butting heads, then you're not achieving that goal of shaping your child's behavior and shaping their development, right? I think that that last thing that she said about getting caught up in your anxiety, I think that defines what the pressure feels like for parents sometimes, right? You're not a parent if you don't worry about your kid at some point, right? And to allow those worries to maybe take a back seat if it's interfering with your relationship with your child and your ability to, again, shape the behavior and development of your child, right? That's so huge. I mean, it was such a great episode.
You know, that leads in perfectly to the episode we did with another doctor who is raising a child with autism and has done lots of research on this, and that was Dr. Teresa Lyons. And here's a quote from her, which also is applicable to any parent, certainly parents with children that are neuroatypical. I certainly feel this with my children with ADHD. Let me play you the clip.
And I think it's also important for parents to understand, okay, as you start resolving things, what does that look like? When you're starting to resolve things, you start out more bad days than good days. Usually like almost all bad days, right? And then the bad days start to get a little bit less, maybe a little less intense. And then they start to get not as often. And it's always one of my favorite things where a parent has shifted into like, maybe even good day, days, or maybe even a little more good days. And then they have a bad day and they're like, whoa, what's going on? This is horrible. And then it's like, wait a second. When was the last time you had a bad day like this? Oh, right. So if you don't celebrate your success and celebrate the things that are changing, it will take a bad day to remind you, whoa, we haven't had a bad day in a while. So much can change on the day to day, but it's cumulative. And if you're not really paying attention to that, you could miss so much great stuff.
So I would say, like she says that if you're not paying attention, there's so much you could miss. And I think my children have taught me to look back and realize what I've taken for granted. And it's fun because I feel this joy in celebrating what could be considered quote unquote normal. Like, how incredible is it when a child starts to learn to read, for example? Have I taken that for granted in the past? I mean, just these normal aspects of development, when your child achieves that, we might miss the celebration of that if our expectations are set too high.
Yeah, I agree. I think I can even see this in the context of something like your child sleeping through the night, even where if your baby is waking up like every hour one night and the parent is just suffering and miserable, it's a slow progression to sleeping through the night, right? For this type of thing, it is something that will most likely get better. And they'll be kind of maybe waking up twice a night instead of every hour. And it's all about that mindset of seeing like, hey, we've come a long way here. Like, let's look at how far we've come. Or they start sleeping through the night and then one day they're waking up every hour, a bad night. And they're like, whoa, just like Teresa said, like, whoa, what happened? And it's like, no, this used to be every night, right? So let's acknowledge as a parent, it's a good mindset to not get too stressed or too upset with the downs when there's ups and downs, right?
As we look to season 3, we will continue our series intermittently interspersed in there on vaccine preventable illness, with this hope that we're educating you and us as parents to make informed decisions about what's best for our children. And I feel like Dr. Krugman just said so concisely why that's important in this day and age.
And I think just to set the stage a little, one of the reasons why this has become even more of an issue now than 30 years ago was that 30 years ago, there was a collective memory in our society of these diseases. Yeah. People literally remembered having measles and chickenpox as kids and missing school for 10 days and having kids in the hospital with meningitis regularly and parents with kids with fevers going into emergency rooms and getting lots of blood work and urine and lumbar punctures and things like that. So there was a collective memory of infectious diseases that because of the vaccines, we've completely eliminated over 30 years. So current parents have no concept at all of the impact of the diseases on the kids. And what they're hearing is the fear that is being promoted by anti-vaccine people about the vaccines, not about the diseases, because the diseases have been eliminated. If we still had the diseases, it'd be, we're weighing pros and cons, right? But right now, there's no diseases, so no one has a sense of what can happen to the child. And I think that's why it's so important to be talking about these things.
Yeah, I hope with every episode we do, our heart and intent to inform parents to be able to make the best decisions for their children with all of the information, including all of the scientific information, the experience we have overseeing thousands of patients over decades of time, in addition to our experience in raising all of these children, right? That people are making informed decisions based on a lot of knowledge and that we can present that in ways as happened with these vaccine preventable illnesses. Everybody needs to understand what these illnesses are and what the risks of getting these illnesses are. And that's something we don't remember anymore because vaccines have been so successful.
And I think one point that a lot of parents that I see in the office that don't quite understand this, and it's not readily obvious, they feel like, well, if it's been eradicated, then we don't need the vaccine anymore. And I think the key point is, and what we've seen in this country, especially with measles, is once we stop vaccinating, these diseases will come back. They haven't been eliminated forever, right? So that is something that's important to reiterate to parents when they're making a decision about these things. And as we end season 2 here, I do want to give a special thanks to our special guests that we've had on the show. We welcomed Dr. Bobby Guyman talking about pediatric dentistry. We had Dr. Julia Jackson on, the pediatric child and adolescent psychiatrist, talking about autism in a 3-part series. Joe Dillon, the divorce mediator, giving a very real story about what it's like to be a child of a divorce and practical tips for parents going through a divorce. Dr. Scott Krugman, a recurrent guest now on several episodes this season about vaccine preventable diseases, and that episode about vitamin K that was very valuable. Teresa Lyons, the mother of a child with autism who has done extensive research as a chemist and a PhD. Her real life stories were very compelling and very moving. And finally, Dr. Kathy Parrish, we welcomed back to the show, talking about single parenthood and the realities and tips behind that. So thank you to all of our special guests this season for coming onto our show and making our season 2 what it was. So thank you.
We want to give a special thank you to our listeners. We are so grateful that you've put your trust and your time in us and that you join us on this parenting journey week after week. We love your comments and your feedback, and we love sharing this parenting journey with you. As we did last year, we are taking a break from our regular programming in August. Sylvia and I will be sending 9 kids off to school this year, as many of you will be doing too, and know that is a really crazy time as we're trying to settle back into the routine of the school schedule and moving college kids and all of those things. So we wish you a really great August as you settle back into your new schedule, if that's what you're doing as kids are starting school.
Yes, and in this break, we won't be on radio silence. We have some special bonus material prepared for you. Please listen to us in our August break, and we will see you for the season 3 opener on September 2nd. I can't wait.
Can't wait. This is 10 Kids, 2 Docs. I'm Dr. Vivian Carlin.
And I'm Dr. Sylvia Bank. We'll see you in season 3.
See you in season 3.
Thank you for listening to 10 Kids, 2 Docs, hosted and created by Sylvia Bank and Vivian Carlin. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and recommend our podcast to other listeners. Visit our website at 10kids2docs.com, where you can find links to social media and leave comments or suggestions. Back next week with more topics in parenting.